prehistoric ocean wasn't just dangerous, it was, honestly a liquid horror show where nightmare creatures with giant eyes stalked through eternal darkness. And, yeah, some of these monsters are still alive today, lurking in places we've barely explored. I mean, look, we think the ocean today is scary, which, fair enough. It's got great whites and giant squids and whatever else is down there that we haven't found yet. But prehistoric oceans, those were on a whole different level of nope. Picture this. You're in water so deep that sunlight gave up trying to reach you about half a mile ago. The pressure would crush you instantly. The temperature is just above freezing. And in this pitch-black, bone-crushing void, things were living. And not just living, they were thriving, getting weird, getting big, and getting really good at killing stuff. See, back then, the deep ocean was where evolution went completely off the rails. No sunlight meant no plants, so everything down there had to get creative about dinner. Some grew massive eyes to catch the tiniest hint of light. Others just said, screw it, and went blind altogether. A few decided to even make their own light and wave it around like some kind of underwater serial killer with a flashlight. And the really messed up part? These weren't just random monsters that showed up for a few million years and then died out. In fact, they were already ancient when dinosaurs were still figuring out how to walk upright. And here's what really gets me. We only know about the ones that left fossils. Most deep-sea creatures just dissolve when they die. Their shells get eaten by acid and they vanish without a trace. So for every horrifying prehistoric sea monster that we've found, there's probably a dozen worse ones that we'll never even know existed. Like, imagine there are 12 creatures out there even more terrifying than the megalodon. The deep ocean back then was essentially a horror movie that ran for 500 million years, starring creatures that would make H.P. Lovecraft throw up, giant eyes staring through eternal darkness, teeth that don't fit in mouths, things that haven't changed their murder strategy since before your great times a million grandmother was even a twinkle in some primordial soup. Meet the ophthalmosaurus. This thing lived 150 million years ago and had eyes the size of dinner plates. Not small dinner plates either. We're talking full-sized fancy restaurant dinner plates. Each eyeball was 9 inches across, which is bigger than most basketballs. Now, you might be thinking, oh, big eyes. So what? Well, those massive eyes weren't just for looking pretty. They were for seeing in complete darkness while diving deeper than most nuclear submarines go today. This reptile could hold its breath for over 20 minutes and dive over 3,000 feet down into water so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Why would anything want to do that though? Well, simple. Dinner was down there. The weirdest part is how good it was at this job. While other marine reptiles were splashing around in shallow water eating fish, Ophthalmosaurus was down there in the void, using those massive eyes to spot the faintest glimmer of bioluminescence. Picture something bigger than a dolphin, but built like a torpedo with eyes so big they had to be reinforced with rings of bone just so they wouldn't collapse under the pressure. And it wasn't even the only one doing this. We found these things all over Europe, so apparently diving into the abyss to hunt tentacled monsters was a popular career choice back then, which tells you something about how messed up the Jurassic oceans really were. But what if you didn't even need massive eyes to be a nightmare? Phosphorus was only 12 feet long. In the world of prehistoric sea monsters, that's basically a minnow. But here's the thing about this particular minnow. It had forward-facing eyes. You know what else has forward-facing eyes? Owls, hawks, things that hunt and kill other things for a living. Most reptiles have eyes on the sides of their heads because they spend their time trying not to get eaten. Phosphosaurus. This guy had both eyes pointing straight ahead, giving it depth perception that would make a sniper jealous. And those eyes were, huge. Not Ophthalmosaurus huge, but big enough that they probably took up half its skull. So, I just think this little monster was nocturnal. While all the big scary mosasaurs were sleeping off their day of terrorizing everything in sight, Phosphosaurus was just getting started. It would cruise through the dark waters using those precision-guided eyes to pick off glowing lanternfish and squid that thought they were safe in the... The really twisted part is how good it was at this job. We're talking about a reptile that figured out how to be an underwater owl 70 million years before actual owls even existed. It wasn't fast enough to chase down big prey in broad daylight. So, it just waited until dark and became the ocean's first serial killer. And get this, it lived in Japan. So, while T-Rex was stomping around on land, the waters of prehistoric Japan were being stalked by this small, precise killer with giant forward-facing eyes, just cruising through the darkness, picking off anything dumb enough to light itself up. Talk about evolutionary specialization. Most mosaurs were built like buses. This one was built like a scalpel. And of course, some deep-sea killers took a more direct approach. Viperfish have teeth so long they stick out of their mouth even when it's closed. These aren't normal teeth. These are straight-up fangs that curve back toward the eyes because there's literally nowhere else for them to go. This fish has been perfecting its nightmare look for 15 million years. And honestly, it nailed it on the first try. The teeth are so big that if a human had proportional fangs, they would be dragging on the ground when you walked. But here's where it gets really messed up. Viperfish use these teeth by ramming into their prey at full speed. You'd think hitting something tooth first would mess up your skull pretty bad. Well, viperists thought of that too. They evolved a built-in crumple zone. The first bone behind their head is basically a shock absorber that keeps their brain from turning into soup every time they spear something. So, this fish just hangs out in the dark, completely motionless, waiting for something to swim by. Then, it fires itself forward and impales whatever was unlucky enough to be in the neighborhood. There's no chase scene. There's no fancy hunting strategy. Just, pure, brutal, lethal efficiency. And the best part, they do this while glowing. Viperfish have lights all along their belly to camouflage themselves from below, and a little fish lure on their back to attract prey from above. So, they're basically a floating death trap with a neon sign that says, free food here. And they're still doing this today. Right now, somewhere in the deep ocean, a viperfish is hanging perfectly still with its mouth full of fangs, just waiting for dinner to come close enough to murder. They've been at it for millions of years, and they're not going to be stopping anytime soon. And they are really scary, but they're not that big compared to the goblin shark, which is also still around today. The goblin shark looks like someone tried to design a shark, but it only ever had a description from someone who'd never seen one. Pink skin, flabby body, and a snout that looks like it belongs on a different animal entirely. But that's not even the scary part. The scary part is what happens when it opens its mouth. The goblin shark can shoot its entire jaw forward about a foot outside its head. Just boom. Suddenly there's a second mouth where no mouth should be. Full of long needle teeth, grabbing whatever was unlucky enough to be nearby. This thing has been doing this exact same strategy for 125 million years. We know this because we keep finding fossil goblin sharks that look exactly the same as the ones swimming around today. While everything else is evolving and changing and trying new things, the goblin shark was just sitting there going, "Nah, I'm good. This is working fine for me." And why would it change? It lives so deep that nothing bothers it. It just floats around in the dark, waiting for something to swim close enough to its face. Then it fires that jaw out and drags dinner back into its mouth. No chasing, no fighting, just pure mechanical efficiency. The weirdest part is that we barely ever see them. They live so deep and are so rare that most people who study sharks for a living have never even seen a living one. But they're down there right now, drifting through the darkness with their extendable nightmare mouths, doing the exact same thing they've been doing since before grass existed. And speaking of sharks, there's another nightmare shark still living today. Frilled sharks look normal until you get up close. Then you realize this thing has 300 teeth arranged in 25 rows, and every single one of them is shaped like a tiny trident. When I say tiny, I mean each tooth is still big enough to do some serious damage. This shark is basically a 6-foot-long swimming mouth that's been practicing the same routine for 80 billion years. It moves through the water like an eel, all wavy and smooth until something gets too close. Then it strikes forward and swallows prey that's half its own size. Whole, no chewing, no tearing it apart, just straight down the hatch. The really disturbing part is how good it is at hiding. Frilled sharks live in caves and crevices during the day, then come out at night to hunt. They're almost never seen at the surface. So, for most of human history, we had no idea they existed.